Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Jadi kita sambung. Okay, kita sambung. Tadi kamu sudah tengok video tentang heat. Okay, we learn the new chapter. Okay, we are learning the new chapter about heat. And also the previous video I taught you the difference between boiling. Okay, boiling and evaporation. And now we're going to learn how heat flow. How do heat transfer from one object to another object, for example, or how do heat transfer across one object from the end to the another end. Okay, so we're going to learn how do heat transfer. So mana mereka bergerak daripada hujung ke hujung. Okay, so heat, what is heat? So heat flow from a hot object to a cold object. So you have to remember this. Sometimes they will ask you in the objective question. Okay, heat flow from a hot object to a cold object. So for example, here is a hot object. So okay, a hot object, and then it will be transferred to a cold object. So the heat will move from the hot object to the cold object. That's how heat transfer, or that's how heat flow. Okay, heat flow from a hot object to a cold object, hot object to a cold object. So how do heat transfer? There are three ways. Okay, so there are three ways how heat flow or how heat transfer. So the first way is conduction, the second is convection, and the third is radiation. So the convection, what is convection? So convection is how heat transfer from from a solid to another solid. So for example, here is a metal rod. Okay, so you put some heat at the end of the metal rod, and then by after a few minutes we feel heat. Okay, we feel at the end, the other end of the metal rod will feel a bit hot. Okay, so itu menunjukkan yang bila kamu panaskan dekat sini, lepas beberapa minit dia akan rasa panas juga dekat sini. Okay, so that's how heat transfer through conduction. When you hit a metal rod at the other end, and then you will feel heat on the palm of your hand on the other end of the metal rod. Okay, from one end to the another end of the metal rod, the heat will be transferred. That's how conduction. Okay, the heat transferred from one end to another end, from one particle to another particle, usually solid. Okay, so we have the second way of how heat flow, convection. So convection is occurs when there is liquid, okay, or maybe when there is gas. So convection occurs throughout a liquid or throughout a gas. For example, if you boil a water. Okay, so for example, you boil a water. First, you have water maybe in the room temperature 26 degrees Celsius, for example. And then when you heat up the water, when you boil the water, it will be about 100 degrees Celsius, maybe in 20 minutes, okay, or maybe in 15 minutes, or maybe in 10 minutes. So how do heat transfer throughout this water? Okay, throughout this water, throughout that liquid, how it transfer is through convection. So first you have temperature of water 26 degrees Celsius, maybe room temperature, and then you have convection. So it will the heat will be transferred throughout this liquid until it reaches its boiling point, 100 degree Celsius. It is how convection works. So nanti dia akan berubah lah, dia akan berputar. So ni kalau kamu masak air dia akan berputar. Okay, dia akan ada circular motion. Okay, circular motion. I'm so sorry. Circular motion. So this is how convection works. Okay, dia circular motion. So when you boil a water, for example, dia akan move lah in a circular motion. Okay, that's how convection works until your water reach its boiling point. So another way for a heat flow is radiation. So radiation, it does not need any medium. Okay, for this you use solid, for this you use liquid and also gas. But for radiation, you does not need any form of any medium. Okay, you only use vacuum or empty space. Okay, so radiation, that's the reason why if you stand near a firewood or if you stand near a fire, you will feel the heat without even touching the object. Okay, that's how radiation works. You does not have to touch the object to totally feel the heat. Even just stand near a firewood or a fire camp, for example, you will feel the heat through radiation, because radiation is the way of heat flow without using any medium. Okay, without using any medium, using vacuum, empty space. Okay, so we're going to look one by one because the conduction. So conduction is a process of transferring heat from a hotter region to a colder region through a solid medium. So conduction using solid. Okay, conduction here using solid. So convection, they use liquid or gas. Radiation does not need any medium. Okay, dia cuma pass through vacuum or empty space. So that's the difference. Whenever they ask you in the objective question, so it's kind of easy to remember. Conduction is solid, convection is liquid gas, and radiation does not need any medium. So that's how you remember if they ask you in the objective question in particular. Okay, so hotter region to a colder region. So for example, convection, when you boil water, okay, when you boil water, there will be convection, okay. It will move in a circular motion. Akan pusing sampai semua air tu menjadi panas. Dapatlah 100 darjah Celsius boiling point. Okay, so when a solid is heated, the particles that receive the heat energy will vibrate and collide with each other frequently. So here, for example, when you have like a metal rod, so metal rod is a really good heat conductor. And then you put some and you put it under a flame, a heat. So how this heat transfer from this end to another end is by vibrating the particles in the metal rod. So when you remember solid particles, they have their own form of particle which is really close towards each other. So when you heat up this, okay, so when you heat up, this particle will start to vibrate. Okay, this particle will start to vibrate. So that's how heat transfer. It will vibrate here, vibrate along the way until the end of the metal rod. So when you put your hand at the end of this metal rod, you will feel the heat from this flame. Okay, so you will feel the heat from this flame. This end, you will feel the heat here just by touching with your palm. So it shows that the heat transfer it's a heat transfer through conduction. Okay, so from solid to through its particle of solid. So when you heat this up, heat transfer through the end of the metal rod. So when you put your hand, okay, you will feel the heat. You will feel the heat of the flame from the another end of the metal rod. So that's how conduction occurs. Okay, so how heat flow through conduction. First of all, the kinetic energy is transferred from a particle to the next particle. Conductor transfer heat faster. So this is how it happens. So for example, you have a metal rod here. Okay, you're gonna see it starts to vibrate. Okay, it starts to vibrate. Okay, we're gonna wait until this heat start again. Okay, so when you look at this, okay, this part of this metal rod will start to vibrate and it will transfer, and then it will transfer the heat to the end of the metal rod. And that's why when you cook something on a pan, for example, and then you hold the lid or the handle of the pan, it will feel hot. Okay, and this shows that the heat transfer through the solid particles of the frying pan. So that's how conduction occurs. So for example, here we look at the third gear. Okay, so for example, here this is a metal rod. Okay, so the particle transfer vibrates among each other. and then you will feel the heat at the end of the metal rod. Okay, you will feel the heat at the end of the metal rod. That's how conduction, heat flow through conduction. Okay, heat flow through conduction is only through solid particles. So we're going to look at the second way of heat flow, which is convection using fluid. Okay, using fluid or gas. Okay, so convection is transfer of heat through fluid by the movement of fluid particles. So this is how when you boil the water, okay, the particle will move in a circular motion. The particle will move in a circular motion and receive heat become less than and expand. So this is how when you boil water, it will have convection. Okay, it will have convection, and this is how the heat transfer. Okay, this is how the heat transfer throughout the liquid until your water will reach its boiling point, and then it will start to bubble up because it has reached its boiling point. Okay, so this is how convection works. The hotter and less dense fluid will move upwards, and the colder less dense fluid will move downwards. So this is how it occurs. Okay, you look at here. Okay, you look at here, the coil A, it will move upwards and it will move downwards. Okay, the cold air will move downwards and the hot air will move upwards. Okay, so the cold air will move downwards and the hot air will move upwards in a circular motion. Okay, in a circular motion. So this is known as convection current. So when you look at here, if you do it in the lab, for example, you can see the flow. You can see the flow of heat, the flow of heat of liquid inside here. So this shows that the convection will move in a circular motion in a liquid or in a gas. Okay, in a gas medium. So this is how heat transferred. Okay, so radiation. Radiation is the third way of heat flow. So radiation is the process of transferring heat without using any medium. So like I told you, convection is conduction is solid, convection is liquid or gas, radiation is without any medium. Without any medium. Okay, it only flow through vacuum or empty space. So vacuum or empty space, like you can find in the space. Okay, like you can find in the space. Lepas. So radiation is, for example, when you stand near a firewood, for example, or when you go camping with your friends and then you set up like a firewood, everyone sit in a circle, and then you have your firewood to heat you up. So that is how radiation works. The heat transfer from this firewood to you, okay, is in the form of radiation. So you don't have to hold this fire. Okay? You don't have to hold this fire to totally feel the heat. You just have to stand near it. So the radiation, the heat will be flow through radiation. Jadi kamu tidak perlu pegang api itu, kamu hanya perlu berdiri sahaja. Dia akan hantar haba melalui radiasi. So for example, when you wanna boil, when you wanna roast like a marshmallow, for example, you put it at the end, and then the heat will transfer from the fire to the marshmallow. And then if you heat it up too long, then you're going to feel the heat transfer through conduction. Okay, so this is how heat transfer through radiation. So when you have your fire, you only put your marshmallow not on top of the fire, but really close to the fire, and it will transfer the heat through radiation. Kamu tidak perlulah buang terus marshmallow dekat dalam ni sampai hangus. Kamu letak dia dekat-dekat ni dan dia akan rasa panas, okay, marshmallow tersebut. If you do it like in if you have like camping with your friends or your family, for example. Okay, so radiation can be absorbed by the surface area, reflect from the surface area, travel in the speed of light. So here, for example, if you do camping with your friends or your family, and then you put like a campfire, and then you put like you boil something, and then you just stand up near your campfire, you will feel the heat. Okay, this heat of transfer is through radiation. You do not need any medium. You do not need any solid. You do not need any liquid or gas, because radiation is a heat flow without any medium, only using vacuum or empty space. Okay, macam ni lah ni, kamu tengok dia akan berpindah radiation tu. Okay, dia berpindah radiation tu daripada api ni pergi ke tangan kamu, kamu tidak perlu pegang pun api tu, tapi kamu akan rasa panas sebab radiation. Okay, so if you have any question, as usual, okay, you can always ask me anytime. So we will look at the next video.